You might not believe me. You might not believe me when I say, hold up. People are becoming more and more stupid. But there is a study that might back me up here. From Quantic Foundry, gamers have become less interested in strategic thinking and planning. I don't think it's surprising. I don't think it's surprising. I've skimmed a little bit over this article. I think it's interesting. Let's take a look. It's a little bit small here, but that's okay. From May 21st, 2024, just this week. In our blog posts, we focus a lot on demographic cohort comparisons and how motivations are linked to in-game preferences, usually using slices of contemporaneous survey data. But because we've been collecting data from our gamer motivation profile for about 9 years, we can also explore how gaming motivations have changed over a long period of time. In this blog post, we'll deep dive into a long-term trend we've uncovered. Over the past 9 years, gamers have become less interested in strategic thinking and planning. Not surprising. Actually, to be fair, I expected a bigger drop than what they have here. The Gamer Motivation Profile is a 5-minute survey that allows gamers to get a personalized report of their gaming motivations excuse me, and see how they compare with other gamers. Over 1.7 million gamers worldwide have taken the survey. 12 motivations that are measured in our model were identified via statistical analysis of how gaming motivations cluster together. There, further explanation here, I don't think it's necessary for this. For this analysis, we used the data from 1.57 million gamers who participated in the Gamer Motivation Profile between June 2015 and April 2024. Respondents from China were excluded because gamers in China have a very different gaming motivation profile, likely due to the historically more isolated development of the gaming industry. Which makes sense to me. What is strategy in our gaming motivation model? In our motivation model, strategy is defined as the appeal of long-term thinking, planning, and careful decision-making. And that is, once again, at an all-time low. Gamers who score high on strategy prefer longer time horizons for planning and complex decision-making with many underlying parameters to consider, all the branching decisions and likely outcomes. Think games like Europa Universalis and Total War. That's just great strategy. Gamers who score low on strategy prefer more reactive/spontaneous gameplay and simple decision-making with few underlying parameters to consider, such as in games like Just Dance and Animal Crossing. I don't think those are good examples, but maybe it's tied to that in their model. A good metaphor for strategy is the size of the whiteboard in your mind that each decision is taken to map out, think through, and optimize. Of the 12 motivations, strategy has changed the most. When we looked for long-term trends across the 12 motivations, we found that many motivations were stable, or experienced minor deviations over the past 9 years. We can see the graphic down there already. Strategy was the clear exception. It has substantially declined over the past 9 years, and the magnitude of this change was more than twice the size of the next largest change. In the chart below, the dots represent the average strategy score among the gamers who responded to the Gamer Motivational Profile each month between June 2015 and April 2024. Each month, it's the same people, which is funny. Using a rolling 3-month window, strategy is represented on the y-axis as a percentile, with the starting date, June 2015, anchored at the 50th percentile. The initial collected data is used to define the starting norm. That makes sense. Using the starting norm as the basis for comparison, the average strategy score has declined to the 33rd percentile as of April 2024. And that is bad. That is kind of bad. Or put more plainly, 67% of gamers today care less about strategic thinking and planning when playing games than the average gamer back in June 2015. It's not even been 10 years. We have some comparisons here to make it easier to understand. How big exactly is a drop to the 33rd percentile? Both percentiles and psychometrics are fairly abstract concepts, and the magnitude of a drop to the 33rd percentile can be difficult to grok. To help anchor this finding, there are some real-world magnitude equivalents using more familiar metrics. As the equivalent of all men aged 20 plus in the US losing 17 pounds in weight, it's the equivalent of all adult men worldwide losing 1.34 inches in height, and it's the equivalent of everyone worldwide losing 6.75 points of IQ. And I find this extremely funny, because this could actually be the case. This could actually be the case. A massive drop in IQ. It's absolutely wild. Gradual persistent decline that predates COVID. It's not just a goof. When we initially had an inkling that strategy had declined, we suspected that it was potentially due to COVID, and avoiding anxiety related to thinking about the future. I think it makes more sense, but maybe. You're thinking about the game. It doesn't matter. But when we conducted the longitudinal analysis, several things stood out. The decline in strategy clearly predates COVID. Yes. It is noticeable from the earliest data collection periods, and the trend line suggests it started before June 2015. Yeah, probably. Probably. I would like this to go another 10 years back if possible, but didn't have the data. It isn't lucky. The trend line also makes clear that what we are observing is a gradual but very persistent long-term downward trend in strategy. I'm trying to. Whatever the cause, it's likely not a sudden single historical event, but part of a larger long-term cultural/psychological shift. I agree. That's why I think 2015 it's too late for this. We need to go back another 10 years. Once again, they don't have the data, and it is a little bit bad. The downward trend slowed down prior to COVID, right before January 2020, regained traction during the COVID era, and it has slowed down since COVID restrictions have been lifted. There's a potential argument to be made that COVID exacerbated I try or prolonged an ongoing trend. That is a possibility, that is fair, that is the fair thing to say. The decline is identical for both men and women. We'll look at potential confounds and data sampling issues in several ways. First, let's break down the chart by gender. In that chart below, we've anchored the starting point of both cohorts, the 50th percentile, so we can more directly compare differences in change over time. Men actually care more about strategy than women, so there should be a gap between the lines. But this will make it hard to visually see any differences in the longitudinal trend lines. The decline in strategy is remarkably consistent across male and female gamers. It also means that the overall finding will be the same even if the proportion of men and women has changed over time, which it largely did not. See below. We can say at the beginning was pretty much a single line. There's some deviation here, they cross again here, just some more deviation. Maybe a little bit too small on the screen. The decline is similar whether we're looking at US or non-US gamers. The decline in strategy is also very similar whether we're looking at US long or non-US countries. As with the gender chart above, the starting point for both cohorts is anchored at 15th percentile, to allow for better visual comparison of differences in the longitudinal trend. And you see that it's actually even worse in the non-US countries. It's actually lower. Getting closer now, but we'll see about that. But why? Why, you might ask? Why has strategy declined over time? There are many similarly related findings in terms of our media consumption habits. For example, over time, shorter YouTube videos have garnered a higher share of overall views. The duration of shots in movies, that is between each cut, has decreased from 16 seconds in 1930 to 4 seconds in 2010. The average time spent on a computer app window, for example on a Word document before switching to a browser window, has decreased from 2.5 minutes in 2004 to 47 seconds in 2016. I would like to bring that up, but I don't have that on top, right? That meme with the kid playing 3 different games in a tablet. Maybe it was several tablets. I don't remember. A small child can be older than 6 or 7 years old. You could see people in the. I've seen some examples on Twitter, for example, right? We could see those quote-unquote summer content that you have like 6 different sources in a video because you have to pay attention to something. That is bad. That is bad. This could be the result of something like that happening. In a slight decline strategy is likely not an idiosyncratic phenomenon among digital gamers, but parallels the general reduction in attention spans observed by researchers in different fields. I agree with this. But because all over-time comparisons are inherently correlational, it's difficult to pin down cause and effect. While we often blame social media for decreased attention spans, there's a lack of concrete causal evidence for this. Of course, it bears pointing out that the causal evidence for this would be difficult to produce since... I thought there had appeared there. Since it's unethical to raise children in artificial labs. They're gonna do it anyway. So there's that. Also, the short duration analysis in movies is a counterpoint to blaming social media entirely. This downward trend in media attention spans can be traced as far back as the 1930s. I guess that is a good point too. Although it's certainly possible that social media accelerated the underlying trend. And I could be really interested in that underlying trend because it doesn't make any sense that each generation is becoming worse and worse than the last. They're more stupid, they have lower attention spans. It is bad. It is really bad. And it would be easy, and I don't know if it's fair, to blame the education system. I think that they have some blame. Partially at least, but I do believe they have some blame. Hard to tell. Another potential hypothesis is that the increasing negativity, polarization, intrusiveness, and emotional manipulation in social media has created a persistent cognitive overload on the finite cognitive resources we have. Yes, but it is still social media though. Put simply, we may be too worn out by social media to think deeply about things. Social media is not real. You don't have to take it seriously. Oh, people are being stupid, laugh at them. Laugh at them! It's just like going to the circus, but for free, and it's always on. Magic, it's absolute magic. For example, higher engagement with social media is correlated with lower math and reading scores, and poorer mental health among teenagers. Of course, again, these findings are correlational and not direct causal evidence. That's fair, but once again, there could be some underlying cause here, right? Teenagers do worse in math and reading when they are constantly on social media. Why are they constantly on social media though? Because they're dumb? I don't know. I don't think that would make sense. Implications for making games and understanding gamers. Even if the underlying causes cannot be identified, it's clear that gamers have become less interested in strategic thinking over the past 9 years. It implies that gamers are now more easily cognitively overloaded. Let's finish this. When they play games and are more likely to avoid strategic complexity. This has implications for game design and marketing. Overall, gamers now prefer shorter time horizons to plan for. The number of steps and branching outcomes they have to think through, and less complex decisions that rely on fewer parameters to consider. And for those of us who study gamers, typically in the more confined context of specific game titles slash franchises. This finding might help explain observed changes among strategy-related player segments over the past decade. They would otherwise have more likely attributed to game feature changes or COVID. I don't think this is correct. I think there's something really wrong here. Let me explain. It implies that gamers are now more easily cognitively overloaded when they play games and are more likely to avoid strategic complexity. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. This is entirely wrong. This doesn't make any sense. Let me explain. Everything you see in newer games, quote unquote, summer games, is just overloaded. Maybe I'm being wrong here too. Maybe it's not cognitively but sensory overload. But they are indeed being overloaded by something. So I don't know if that makes sense. It is. I find this hard to tell. Also, we could be saying, if you're seeing a lot, too many flashes, lights, quick movements, and whatnot, you don't have brain power left to actually think. Maybe, only maybe. What do you think? Do you think gamers have become less interested in strategic thinking and planning? Are there other potential causes that come to mind? Do you feel your attention span and ability to think deeply has changed with the emergence of social media and or smartphones? Are there other documented changes in our media consumption habits or cognitive metrics that you think might be related to this? That's a good point. This is a really good question. I just similar or related findings specific to gamers and games research. Do they have comments? They do have comments. That is interesting. The thing is, I'm going to bring up something that might be wild for some, but I think it makes sense. Are there other documented changes? We're gonna be a little bit free here with the definition of documented. Our media consumption habits or cognitive metrics that think might be related to this. Yes. Everything you have now, at least nowadays in media consumption, is instant gratification. So you don't work for it, you don't think about it, it's just instant gratification. And it's way worse in pornography. Back in the day, you had actual movies. 30 minutes to 1 hour, right? Maybe even more. Nowadays you have extremely short clips of what, 15 seconds? And they have to be more brutal. We could also mention how consumption of pornography kills your brain, literally. And it's been happening for more than 10 years now, which I think it correlates a little bit. Then you have younger and younger people seeing really extreme pornography. So what do you think is gonna happen to those developing brains, maybe 11 years old, just to give an example, when they are consuming extremely short and extremely brutal pornography clips? That's going to obliterate the brain. Let's check the comments here. Not that one. And here's where the part of the strategic motivation shifts to. That's a good point. Probably to nowhere. It's probably from probably what they were mentioning here. From cognitive overload to sensory overload, which is a simplistic way of looking at things, but makes sense. Really, I also like how you try to rule out the possible causes. Just more gamers from a region or age group that doesn't generally care for it. It's a good report. That you respond to comments to discuss all this. Okay, this could be interesting. I'm a strategy gamer, and here's my 2 cents. We are part of a community for a strategy game, The community tends to push the devs to increase complexity. Fair point. And prioritize balance over fun, as the game matures. I can think of several games I was into when they rolled out, but after 2+ years of changes and quote-unquote balancing, they've either nerfed something I enjoyed or added a system I didn't enjoy, I guess. Yeah, it's encounters here. And so I moved on. Go through this enough and you're ready for a quote-unquote diet where other genres appeal more. TLDR. Strategy is a genre where games change quite a bit from launch to maturity, and they cheat players along the way. For especially, I don't know what they mean by this. Times 4? That wouldn't be correct. This is very possible to me. I think of myself as someone who loves strategy games, but then I struggle to think of ones I like. For me, RTSs in particular are pleasureless, not because of anything inherent about the genre itself, which actually has huge potential, but because of the competition scene that surrounds them. 4X games, okay, it's a dev team, I guess. Maybe not, I don't know. I don't know what this is, actually. Fighting games in basically every other genre that attracts competitive play a similar ruin for me, with very rare exceptions such as Smash Brothers. Because the developers end up prioritizing regulated competition over dynamic fun. That is fair, that is fair. These days I get my strategy fix almost entirely from games like Factorio and RimWorld. Ah yes, the autism games, which do not shy away from throwing unfair events at the player and let you really flex your creativity and flexibility. As I create a problem in other genres too, especially ones with a strong competitive play. Discovering a fun tactic that makes your game memorable is another man's no fair. There's only a matter of time before a foreign war starts. It's exhausting. And that is a good point, right? That is a good point. We've talked about it. We've mentioned this before. How every single time games want to become wars because they want to appeal. You have the two genders here, which is kind of funny. On one hand, you have devs trying to appeal to the general public. That means lobotomizing the game if it's too complex. And on the other hand, you have appealing only to competitive players, which is an extremely small amount of players, and that also kills the game. That was wild back then in League of Legends, for example. I don't know how it is today, and I don't care, not gonna lie. So yes, apparently we're getting dumber as a species. The gamer species. It's bad. It's bad. We can see here. In this app. Oh, that is big. That's a little bit too big. That's okay. I don't know. I really enjoy complexity in games. And to be fair, sometimes games could seem a little bit too complex. So it's hard. It's hard to tell. You also have, as per usual, right? Game journalists being like, "No, this game is too difficult. This game is too hard. It has to be easier." Shut up. If it's not for you, don't play it. Jesus Christ, you're so annoying. But yeah, we should try to strive to think more when we play. Sometimes reactive gameplay is also really fun, but sometimes planning things out is actually really cool too. But that's just my opinion, man.